Keir Starmer bans Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. Oh, as ever, let me explain. Morning, chums. Nice to see you today. Thank you so much for joining me. You know, the world of politics, as I've often said, is a very difficult world. I cover it every single day. And, you know, it's up and down. And, you know, what I would say to you is there are really good politicians and there are really bad politicians. And there are those that just want to make money and get famous. You know, you see it time and time again. These people that move into the world of television, ex-politicians. And you kind of think to yourself, well, this was the goal all the time. But you learnt the job by being a politician, getting invited into TV studios, and suddenly they're now hosting breakfast shows. And you know what I mean? You think, okay, so you weren't that dedicated to your constituencies. That's what I would say. What's fascinating also is the fragility of the people that you and I vote in. As I said, I've met Keir Starmer on a number of occasions, and he's the most strange man you could ever really want to meet. There's absolutely no personality going on there. You know when some people can fake a personality? Well, there's nothing. I mean, it sounds awful. You know, if you were sat in a room with someone and you didn't speak, you know, the sort of thing, and they don't speak, and you think, right, okay, you know, it's that level of, whoa, he just has nothing to say. You could say maybe he's cautious. I would just say he literally is, dare I say, that vacuous. And I can speak from my experience, obviously. But what's interesting is, just as I say, the fragility and, of course, how nervous they get when they realise their popularity is literally slinking away. Let me explain. All right, nice to see you. Welcome back, one and all. Nice to have your company. Thank you so much for joining me. They are the people that you and I put in power. Don't forget that. It's your money they're toying with. The thing that annoys me about governments, and I'm sure it's like this around the world as well, you know when they say, for instance, over here we've had this thing of the government have provided breakfast clubs for all the people that can't afford to give their children breakfast. Very noble, very nice. The government have provided nothing. You and I, the British taxpayer, have provided that money, and that needs to be readdressed, because it's all very well Angela Rayner and, you know, Bridget Phillips, and oh, we're doing marvellous. No, you're doing marvellous with the money that you keep putting up from these hard-working people. That's truly the deal. Never forget that. But now the big nemesis, of course, is the Reform Party, and exactly where it stands with the Conservatives, and more importantly, of course, with Keir Starmer, polling incredibly badly. Now, it's interesting because Keir Starmer, behind the scenes at 10 Downing Street, was hosting some kind of, you know, usual press conference that becomes so dreary. Honestly, wow, at least the White House and that fabulous girl, they put a bit of spark into the conversation. You know, you think, wow, you'd have to perk up here. According to a very well-placed source, now we will no longer, and as ever, allegedly, be allowed to ask questions about, for instance, Nigel Farage, or indeed Richard Tice, or anybody associated with the Reform Party. And according to this source, this is simply because, of course, that Keir Starmer believes that, you know, they're getting too much publicity on the back of the successful things that the Labour Party are doing. Right. Truly, you know, this started out with a reporter asking, do you get annoyed with these particular people living rent-free in your head? Keir Starmer did not like this. In fact, he looked quite teary. He's that fragile, right? So what was interesting was now we've been told that unless it's a specific policy question regarding policy or reform or whatever, you're not allowed to bring that person up. Now, isn't that really ridiculous when you think, because it just shows you that first and foremost, competition is a good thing. We need competition. We need to be able to put these people to account. But also the fact that if you just ban it, now, what sort of state are we now living in? You're not allowed to have that opinion. You're not allowed to have that thought. Either way, as this reporter pointed out, somebody's living rent-free in Keir Starmer's head and he's not too happy about it. Anybody else agree? Neil Sean, Kensington, London.